All right. We are here at the Gentleman's Renaissance. I am John Jackson, your host, and we are coming here live from Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, we're not live, but we are here. Uh, why is there a Gentleman's Renaissance? We needed a Gentleman's Renaissance because there's a lot of men out there who are lost. They don't know where they fit in. They don't see things out there that are targeted to them. And it's just time to have some really good men's programming, no matter what your walk of life is, no matter what your race is, no matter what your politics are. And a little bit about me, I was an operative in the Democratic Party for about 10 years. I played a big role in Georgia, flipping from Republican to Democrat in the presidential race and 2 U.S. Senate races. And I gained a lot of perspective on politics on both sides of the aisle and on life in general. And I noticed that sometimes liberals, progressives, Democrats don't target men. They don't message to men. They don't even message to the second most loyal base of the Democratic Party, which is black men. And what I believe that does is that seeds the narrative on men to Republicans and conservatives. And you have this very influential podcaster influencer space called the Manosphere, where you have Joe Rogan and Andrew Tate, Dr. Jordan Peterson, the late Kevin Samuels, Umar Johnson, a bunch of guys that are like that. And they're pretty much conservative or right-leaning guys, very traditionalist guys. And progressives are quick to criticize them, but not quick to offer an alternative or offer a counter. And I'm here to say, listen, I don't always agree with all those guys, but I respect what they're doing. I respect that they're messaging to young men who are lost. So I'm here to provide that counter respectfully. And with that, I want to welcome our guest today. He is a distinguished person in radio. He considers himself a traditionalist and a conservative who wants America to return to morals, values, education, and honoring marriage. He is an independent. He appears as a swing voter in the voter file. He has been in radio for years. He is the host of the Shelley Wynter Show. And I respect him a lot because he's an independent conservative. He doesn't let the Republican Party speak for him, doesn't let anybody speak for him. And that's kind of how I see myself as a progressive. And there's people out here saying that Democrats and Republicans can't have good discourse. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I am a two-time Bernie Sanders supporter. I was the first county party chair in Georgia to be endorsed by Bernie Sanders' organization, Our Revolution. I am, by the Democratic Party's definition, far left, but I can sit down with Republicans. I can sit down with people who don't have my views, because that is important for this country to go forward. The man I respected the most in my life, my father, was a Republican, my late father, a black Republican. So I don't shame anybody for their views. I listen. I try to understand why they're coming from where they're coming from. And so with that, I introduce my friend, my big brother, Shelley Wynter.
Thanks, John. I appreciate those words. I got to write that introduction. You got to record that for me so I can put that down in my intro. That's a good one. I agree with everything you said. The only thing I disagree with, I agree with everything you said. I think that the Democrats are not losing black men to the Republicans. I think they're losing black men to everybody, to the Republicans. They're losing them out of the black church. If you go to a church right now, black church, I equate the black church to the Democratic Party. You go to a black church right now, any average black church, mid-sized to big, mega church, you will see 85 to 90% women in there. And the men that are there are going to be older men. And it's the same way the church lost men is the same way the Democratic Party lost men, because both of them made a conscious decision to go after the women and leave the men alone and not speak to the men and speak to their issues.
And that's a mistake. because psychology will tell you men's issues are a thing. Medicine will tell you men's issues are a thing. So why would you leave men's issues out? Why is the right so quick to address men, but the left is not? What's your opinion about that?
Oh, so you have on the left, you have the ponytail, Birkenstock, skinny jean, man purse wearing guy that is going to be more liberal. On the right, you have the hunters, the sports guys, the walk on the outside of his woman guy, and the woman's carrying the baby. I'm sounding sexist here on purpose. I'm not a sexist. Well, maybe I am, but the point the point I'm trying to make is that the Democrats love women, and they love the femininity. That's their base. Women are their base, especially if you're going to tell your base that the other side is evil, racist, sexist, homophobic, all of these things. So you've got to message to women. And so I think that's really what it becomes. And then the men, a large number of the men that go along with that are men that just interested in meeting those women that are coming along as a base. I see it all the time.
Well, here's the problem with that. That is the very elite segment of the base. You're thinking of the hipsters.
That's what I'm talking about.
Gentrify urban communities.
Uh-huh.
The reality is the Democratic base is a lot of working class men.
Absolutely.
Who need to be addressed as men.
Right.
Men who have helped build America. Men who have worked unionized jobs. Men who work construction. And in my opinion, it's an elitism to it. There's an elitism factor to it. And I think that it's a mistake to leave that out. And whether you agree with Republicans or not, one side of the aisle shouldn't be defining a narrative for a whole group of people.
You're right, but it's elitism. There's elitism in this country, period, right? So you have most Republican elites, right? The base will call them rhinos. They're funders, they're donors, but most Republican elites, the Republican establishment, has no love and respect for the base, be pre-Trump or post-Trump. And it's the same thing on the other side. So what you have is you have a bunch of I'm smarter than you people who truly believe that they are smarter than normal people, yet they need their votes, so that's how they message. They message in a way they believe everyone thinks, not in a way people actually think. I just recently read an article where the unions are turning on Joe Biden, not turning on Joe Biden, turning on the Democrats, because they're viewing the Republican Party as more of a working class party, particularly in the Trump era, and which is interesting to me because that has never been the case. Republicans were usually the people that were, rich and all that, the pro corporations and everything like that. So it's very interesting to watch that shift, particularly under Donald Trump, where union men and women are starting to lean right. And it's a lot to do with immigration. It's a lot to do with the culture wars. But more importantly that, it's a lot to do with the messaging. If you simply just go out there every election and say, we're going to, help you when you strike or push for bigger wages, but it happens every 4 years, then it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Wow. So in the social media space and on social media platforms, there is a ever influential manosphere with Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson. Everybody knows who these guys are. They're very right-leaning, and they talk about men's wellness, men's issues, and they have a right-leaning slant to them. The left is highly critical of them because they don't agree with a lot of the things they say, but fail to give a counter message to those Gen Z and young millennial men who are so impressionable and acting as if that group is not a group we need to target directly. Do you think that has an impact on electoral, politics and why men tend to vote more conservative?
I think what we're going to see in 2024 is, although there are millions of those young men out there, I'm not sure how motivated they are to turn out. And I think that's why men traditionally have been not targeted for the most part because of turnout issues. But the elites don't realize, because there's no level of self-awareness. They don't realize that these men, working class, poor, whatever, white and black, don't turn out. It's not because they don't care. It's not because they're ignorant to voting and how important it is. It's because they don't like either side, because they feel left out. And so what happens, here's where I want to answer your question. I don't think that new generation, someone's got to show me evidence that they're going to turn out in the numbers that they are in the numbers that they reflect. That's my concern. When we see, like I see people saying that Biden's winning 18 to 29-year-old young people, it's a close gap with Trump. But the point is, are they going to turn out? Can you count on them to turn out? You can count on a 45-plus black, white, Republican, or Democrat to turn out. So that's the thing. That's going to be interesting this go around, particularly with the issues of the border, particularly with the issues of going to war, how the numbers in which that 18 to 29-year-old male turns out. And I can't answer that because historically they have not had high turnout, reflective of their total population.
So I think there's a lot of economic anxiety out there for men because inflation has been out of control. The cost of living was out of control before inflation. And so much value in being a man is put in your ability to start a family and provide and protect. And every man would provide if they had the means to. And I think both sides of the aisle can acknowledge it is harder to provide with today's cost of living. And it seems like that economic anxiety is not getting really addressed adequately. And I mean, that some of that anxiety led to the rise of the Trump movement.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. It absolutely has. And that's why you're looking at a tight race. I mean, look at this race, right? Let's start there. You have Trump, who has flaws, tremendous amount of flaws as a candidate, right? And he's still in the running with an incumbent president. Now, we don't know what's going to happen because they also told me there was going to be a red wave in 2022, which never happened. So, let's just go with what we know, not what we don't know. And it's amazing to me. I mean, I'm going to be voting for Trump in the primary and the general, but I got to tell you, I'm like, how can this be close? Why should this shouldn't even be close? Biden should be running away with this. And the reason why I say that, it's incumbency. The economy is turning around. There are things happening. So to your point about young men, if I were a Republican Party strategist, I would be talking to young men about dating, about not starting a family necessarily, because there's some polling out there that shows young men are, less, they're waiting till later to start families because the women are waiting till later. And that ties into the economy also. But I think to a lesser extent, I think it's becoming cultural right now. That's just my point of view. But I think that if I were a Republican strategist, I would target young men with the simple, this is how much it costs you to go on a date in 2016, 2017, 2018. This is how much it's going to cost you to go on a date in 2024, 25, and 26. That's the simple messaging I would do. But the thing about Republicans, I tell you, man, and I see it every day, they know there's an opportunity to talk to African Americans, but they don't know how. But then they won't hire the people who can, right? Or when they do, it's for an event here, and a successful event will be 6 people at some coffee shop. So they rely mostly on saying the same thing to the same people. The Republicans, as a brand, has come to the conclusion that if I drive turnout, if I get 80, 90% turnout from my base, I can win, even though there are lower numbers of us, of Republicans, right? Registered Republicans. The real situation is, I believe the reason why I'm conservative and I vote Republican is because I believe our policy ideas are better, particularly for my people. So that's why I'm on this side. And I think that we don't do a good enough job of messaging on those policy ideas. And that's what I think we should do more of. Entrepreneurship, smaller government. When people say, oh, tax cuts are for the rich, no, tax cuts really benefit the middle class and the lower middle class more than it benefits the rich. The rich guy can afford to pay or not to pay. The middle class guy is squeezed. So if you have tax cuts, the middle class working man, who you said before, that working man, he benefits. There's a lot of things that work for us that we can message men, but Hispanics, we don't do well in messaging to. They'll hire some young white guy to message to Hispanics. They'll hire some, young white girl to message to Asian Americans, and they'll hire some, mixed biracial person to message to black people instead of going directly to those specific groups, finding Republican strategists and messengers to go into those groups. And when we do find a messenger, it's usually someone that's hugely flawed, that you can see this person is literally running a game and it's just there because they're one of the only few people, and it becomes a game for them. Because I've seen so many flawed messengers in the Republican Party to target African Americans, and I've seen some very eloquent, very committed black Republicans who can message well to the black community because they know it, they feel it, they're part of the culture, they know the culture, who are pushed to the side for somebody that pretty much just looks like a white Republican, to be quite frank with you.
I got you.
Sorry to talk so long.
No, that's why you're here. We want to hear your input on the issue. So I want to ask you about a specific bill in Georgia, House Bill 650, pertaining to mobile barbershops. How do you feel that impacts the black community or black
tremendously? Americans for Prosperity is a national nonprofit. I think they're 501c4, I believe, but they help Republicans, they help conservatives message, and they push bills. They're a free market, basically a free market organization. They support the free market in every way. That bill doesn't only help black barbers, it helps anybody that might be, for instance, you're coming out of lockdown, you're coming out of jail, and you can cut hair, but you can't afford a brick and mortar. You can't get the license. You can't, there's things that are hindering you from, and you have clippers. You know what I'm saying? You have a bag of clippers that's hindering, and you end up cutting hair in an apartment. You end up cutting hair, on the street. Well, what this bill allows people to do is start a mobile barbershop that you can take your car, you could pull up in front of a Walmart, put a chair up, folding chair, get your apron, and just start cutting hair under a tent like people pull up and cook barbecue and sell food. And I think it's a wonderful thing to do. Any way to any bill that allows people to use their ingenuity to create opportunities to make money is a good bill to me. There's another bill in addition to that passed earlier this week. That one I think is just getting out of committee. There's another bill that passed earlier this week that allows for colorists, hair washers, and something else in the beauty salon. I'm not familiar with the female, beauty salon, but not the hairstylist, but the other ancillary services that a beauty salon does. Those people don't have to be licensed. So that's a bill that helps black women. But we can't talk about it enough because there's going to be, and that was a bipartisan bill. A lot of Democrats voted for that. But that's something we should be pounding on. We should be pounding on that, particularly in this 2024 election. We are the party of free market. We're the party of entrepreneurship. We're true capitalists. Particularly the black conservative is a true capitalist. And so I believe that if I have a product, if someone wants to buy this glass because it's the coldest glass of tequila, very good tequila, by the way, fellas. If it's this glass of tequila, if someone wants to buy it from me free. I should be able to sell it without any regulations, without having to be part of a distributor, without having to be part of a store. I should be able to sell it. And those are the next things that come down next. That's the next mafia that we have to tackle in the state of Georgia, is the liquor distribution business, because that's a true mafia-run business, not in the true sense of gangbangers, but it's a it's a monopoly, and it's bad for business.
I got you. Well, like you, I support the policies I do because I do believe they would be good for the black community, except it's more from a progressive perspective.
Gotcha.
And I don't, if a conservative can make that argument of why it's good for the community, I support it. I'm open to it, even though I tend to be progressive. But as a progressive, I tend to support free education. I tend to think that healthcare is a human right. And I tend to think that if less black Americans had student loan debt, there'd be more millennial black folks buying homes. And which is a great way of building wealth. And so
you'll be surprised that I agree with all those things.
And that what I was going to say, one of the states that made free community college education law was Tennessee. So free education is not constricted to the left or right. I study the parliamentary system in the UK, and the conservatives there do support a universal health care. And I think there are some issues in America that we need to stop looking at as left or right, conservative, and tax cuts are one of them. I do think that middle class tax relief is a good thing. But I don't agree with coddling the rich. But I also think that we should not stop a program that helps the middle class just because it helps the rich.
Right. Let me tell you. Right. Exactly. That's well said. Let me tell you what I see in what I do. I air, shameless plug, I air every night on 95.5 WSB 7 to 10 here in Atlanta. And please, if you can, follow my YouTube page, Shelley Wynter. They'll tell you the spelling, but I had to do that, fellas. I'm sorry. But let me tell you what I've learned in talking on this side of the fence. I've realized that there are truly, truly, truly people who influence and manipulate the opinions of a large segment of people, just like on your side. The Democrats, by and large, pushed back on free education when Bernie was running. They pushed back on all the things Bernie liked. And it wasn't because the base didn't like it, but it was because the elites in the Democratic Party would have lost money if this thing came to fruition. Well, there's the same base, there's the same elite people on the right, who would lose money if certain policies were implemented. I am completely for school choice, Well, if I'm for school choice, I've got to have a free education, right? That has to be a part of the choice. And when you say free education, I want to make sure that I know that you're talking about in a secondary sense. College sense, not right, because we already have free public education. Right, I'm all for that. Yes, you should have to get into that free education system. I don't think it should be for just anybody that walks up and fills out an application, because then you limit the, you make it, if you give everyone access to it, meaning if everyone can get it for free, then it loses its value in many ways, right? So I do believe it should be free. What I really believe, what should be free yesterday is technical schools. There's no reason, if someone can come out of school making $120,000 after becoming an electrician, a plumber, and all these things, there's no reason why they should have to pay for that. Because the services should be paying the people for going to school in order to hire them at a certain point. So yeah, I'm for those policies. The problem is that I have people on my side who don't want that to happen, and they message to other people, the voters, and tell them it's socialism. Well, it's not socialism. They tell them that it's big government. No, it's not big government. It's allowing your neighbor to make a choice on what they want to do. Last thing I'll say here, I was for the student loan forgiveness. Why? Because I have a student loan and I don't want to keep paying it. But a lot of my listeners, 90% of my listeners said I took out a loan on a pickup truck and no one relieved me of my debt, and I took out a loan on a pickup truck to start a business. Well, the difference is you took out a loan on a pickup truck from a for-profit business that is in the business of lending people money and then charging them interest to pay it back. That's why no one forgave your loan. The only person that could have forgave your loan was the actual lender. In this case, the government lent us money, and the government is coming around as the lender and saying, hey, I want to forgive your loan. And for the people on my side that talk about those are my taxes, I don't see them screaming about their tax money going to Israel, Ukraine, wherever it's going on a daily basis. And that's federal taxes. We're not talking about state taxes. So there's a lot of things we agree with, and I think it's really the problem is the elites on both sides message and manipulate and influence the voters because they take advantage of the fact that those voters hate the other side. So if a Democrat has a good idea, we can talk about it all day, but because the people on the right hates Democrats or have been told to hate Democrats, been made to hate Democrats, been pushed to hate Democrats, then whatever comes out of a Democrat's mind becomes a bad idea. And a reverse is flipped. And that's what I think I try and do on my show every night. And I think what you're trying to launch here with the Gentleman's Renaissance.
Yes, absolutely. So I got a question for you, and it's related to crime. Most perpetrators of crime are men, but most victims of crime are men as well. I think it points to society kind of losing its way with our boys and how we raise our boys. And that's so many boys are growing up to go in the prison system, to become mass shooters, to become drug addicts. And I think, what do you think the best way for us to create a society of honorable men who are law-abiding citizens?
Two-parent households. It's really the only way. I think that there's been a push. So let's go back to affirmative action, right? So Nixon comes along. He's influenced by black conservatives, and they say, look, you can't start a race with someone 50 yards behind and someone 50 yards ahead and then expect the person 50 yards behind to win the race, right? Or even catch up at any point. So they come up with affirmative action and they say, hey, we're going to pass this law where if you're African American, we will let you into these schools. You have to have good grades. You have to be qualified, all those things, but we'll put you in a school. We'll give you this job and everything like that. Well, that affirmative action included two things at the end that no one ever talks about. One, it included white women, which are the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action. But then what they did was they separated the black women from the black men and gave more incentives for a company to hire black women, which it wasn't on purpose. It's just one of these things when you try and do things, you get unintended consequences. So if a company has to hire an African American because the federal government says you get points or whatever you get, or it's a benefit to you tax-wise to hire black people, of course you're going to hire a woman. Because you said white women, so black women checks two boxes. Black man doesn't check any boxes except for the black box, and we're put in the category of white men essentially when in these corporations. So my point is you do that, and then you skip ahead 40 years. This is where you are. You have a bunch of single moms. You have a bunch of black women who are highly educated. They have their own homes. And you got a bunch of black men who are not highly educated, who are working class. And the women at the same time are being taught by Steve Harvey's book and pop culture and TV shows and everything to not date down because that guy makes less money than you, which dating down to me doesn't make much sense, because if a guy's making 50 and you making 100, you're not dating down because he's still a man. This is what you've been looking for. So all of these things pushed together, put up in a salad bowl and mixed up are why we are here where we are right now. And it's my premise, and what I try and push to the black community and anybody that will listen is that if we go back to men and women loving each other and getting married and having families, that would all go away. I'm sorry, it would not all go away, but it would decrease the crime, criminal behavior in our communities by a lot. And that criminal behavior is not coming because we're more violent than anybody else. That criminal behavior is coming from the fact that you have societal influences being pushed by the left, I might add, of sex, violence, drinking, boozing, drugging, all of that being pushed on kids from 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And now you're seeing the effects of it. One of my big sheroes, I call her, in my life is C. Dolores Tucker. Had we listened to C. Dolores Tucker in the late 80s, we wouldn't be seeing none of this right now. Absolutely, positively none of this. But to the point of elite Democrats put up a Michael Eric Dyson to talk about rap at that time were griots. The elite Democrats put up the rappers to say, oh, it's just music, it's just fantasy, it's just entertainment. They put those people up there to do that because it was making them money. And look where we are now. I'm going to get a T-shirt that says, salute C. Dolores Tucker.
Awesome. So a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle think the Me Too movement went too far, burning folks at the stake without due process. In essence, it killed its credibility. It hurt real victims because you were taking the process out of things, just canceling folks on allegations. A prime example was Al Franken, and most Democrats don't think Al Franken should have resigned.
Nope.
His reactionary liberal coworkers ended his political career. And with the history of false accusations against black men in this country, I've always been a proponent of a thorough investigation of allegations and not simply throwing people under the bus. That's fair for the accused and that's fair for the victim. Because if you want a victim to see justice, you want a thorough process. You want to know exactly what happened so we can get that victim justice. But if the victim is not telling the truth, the alleged victim, we want to make sure that accused gets their name cleared. And so to me, that's just what a fair society does. Do you think that the Me Too movement's missteps and how it was used for political hit jobs had a negative impact on society and electoral
Absolutely.
politics?
Forget the politics. Look at the brother in Dallas that was drafted to play football, had to spend years in jail for a false accusation. There's a Baltimore Bill. This is white, the black guy, and then the white guy, the Buffalo, punter that was drafted by the Buffalo Bills didn't even make it to camp because some lady said that freshman year in college he raped her as part of an orgy. Never happened. So yeah, people want power. So if you tell somebody straight up, you name it a movement, #Me Too. So that means every woman that's legitimately been assaulted, now every other woman is Me Too. Right? So everyone can say they've been assaulted, right? Every woman, can say they've been assaulted. So when you do that, now you have people just saying whatever to say whatever. Yes, you're right. The biggest problem with the Me Too movement was that it impacted and negatively shined a light on real victims. There are real women out there who've been raped, assaulted, sexually harassed, and everything else. But if you look at it from a corporate political standpoint, sexual harassment, rape, assault, they're all wrapped up into the same thing. You lose your job either way on the accusation. So I don't believe Bill Cosby raped anybody. I do, however, believe that R. Kelly went too young. Yes, absolutely. You're a pedophile. You know what I mean? That's different. So I do believe the Me Too movement destroyed so many lives, and nobody has apologized for it. That's the most disgusting part, that nobody has apologized for it. The girl in the Buffalo Bills case, the guy that was drafted by Buffalo Bills, there's no ramifications for doing what she did, and that's where I think policy. If Republicans want to message the black men and men in particular, they've got the white men, but if they want to message the black men, you run on a policy of saying if a woman files a false accusation against you for sexual assault, rape, or sexual harassment, that woman will look at a maximum of 7 to 10 years in jail. That's what I would do. And it's got to be false. I'm not talking about you got found not guilty. That's totally different. I'm talking about something that did not happen and you're accusing someone that it did happen. E. Jean Carroll, who believes her for real? You know, if you hate Trump, you can hate Trump, but you know damn full well nobody believes that woman. Nobody believed the Supreme Court Justice Christine Blasey Ford, who said that what's his name, Brett Kavanaugh raped her in ninth grade. No one believed her. Yet this was a political hit job, nearly ruined a man's life. In E. Jean Carroll's case, it might cost the man $83 million. And look at the case. It was defamation on calling her a whack job and a liar. How's that? You know me. You know, people have called me worse than a whack job and a liar that I'd love to sue for $83 million. So, excuse me. So I think Republicans need to attack that from a man standpoint of view. You know, men, you're in danger. They're trying to wipe you out. It's true. They're trying to take away masculinity. And I don't mean it in some conspiratorial terms. I really mean it in the terms of they don't want alpha males. They don't want men out here that want to play football, that want to, box in a backyard with no gloves, that want to shoot pool on a Friday night, and look at women go by and play music on a jukebox. They don't want that. They want submissive, cowardly, weak back men to walk around so they can hold sway over. Because if you take the man out of any society, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, if you take the man out of a society, that society is completely malleable and controllable.
I think so, and I think sometimes,
am I talking too much?
I think it's underestimated how good of an impact a good father has on the lives of women and girls.
But you have to have real men to be real fathers.
So, I have to ask you. I'm going to ask you two questions in one since we're running short on time. The first question I'm going to ask you.
I haven't finished my drink yet.
Oh, you're going to finish the drink.
No, you can't. You can't end the podcast or my segment of the podcast till I finish my drink.
Okay, gotcha.
That should be a rule. That should be a rule. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So, tell me about the Wynter family and who is the greatest influence on you in the direction you've taken.
My grandfather, hands down. My grandfather, Walter G. Lockhart, my mom's dad. The dude was amazing. He was a member of he was a Mason. And to tell you about manhood, right? My grandparents were married literally to the day they died. My grandmother passed, say February, I can't remember February, and my grandfather passed that February the next year. He lived a year after she passed. They were married 70 plus years. When I was like 12 or 13, I went to their 50th wedding anniversary, right? So, any case, I'll tell you a story. I was getting older. I was at my grandfather's house. I was staying with him because my grandmother had passed, and my mother said, spend more time with your grandfather. He's going to be lonely. So one day I get there. He says, reach under the closet, get the shoebox. I'm sorry, it's going to be a quick story. Reach under the shoebox, get that shoebox. He had a pint of vodka, pack of Cools, and a lighter. I said, Papa, you have throat cancer. You're not supposed to drink or smoke. He said, at my age, if I stop right now, will it go away? Just hand me the box. So we sat there. I'm drinking. I didn't smoke cigarettes at the time, so I'm drinking with my grandfather. And I asked him, because I'm young, I'm 20-something years old, 25, 26 years old, and I'm running the streets with a chicken without his head on. Women. And he said, you got all these women calling you. I said, well, how were you able to do it? How were you able to stay married to the same woman so long? I mean, that just seems stupid and impossible, and why would you do it? And he said, I cheated on your grandmother one time. And he said, she took a steak knife, stuck it in, put it in my chest when I was coming to the house and said, if you ever see that woman again, I'll cut your heart out and feed it to you. It's my grandmother talking to my grandfather. He said he never touched another woman after that. Wow. My point of saying real manhood was, when he got busted, he never did it again. But here's the thing. My grandfather ran that household, but so I asked him, I'm sorry, let me give you the true story. I mean, not the true story, but to finish the story. Here's where I'm talking about more husbands and more fathers and more men. I asked him, I said, well, how were you able to stay that long? And he said, like, what did Mama do? I called my grandmother Mama. What did Mama do to, you stayed that long after the one time, but how did you were married 75 years. How do you do that? He said, because your grandmother made me believe that I was in charge. Think about that. Your grandmother made me believe that I was in charge, which means he knew he wasn't in charge, but he was man enough to play the role of being in charge, knowing his woman was moving the ship, steering the ship and everything. But he was willing to be led. He was willing to fund. He was willing to protect. He was willing to provide all of that, knowing that my grandmother was woman enough and strong enough to say, I'm gonna put my man out front. But I'm making the decisions here. He, of course, I'm not saying he was a punk or anything like that. My grandmother wasn't going to him and saying, we getting ready to do this. She would go to him and say, hey, Walter, what you think about this? Oh, yeah, let's do it. Knowing that's what she wanted him to do. And he knew that's what she wanted to do. And that's what I mean by that's what we need more of. We need more women smart enough, strong enough, not manipulators, not money hungry, not trying to just get over and live the soft life for the rest of their lives or for some other man. You know what I mean? But women strong enough to, I'm gonna help provide. I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I'm gonna put you out front, or I put the girl out front, my woman out front. It depends.
I'm gonna say, as a progressive, I agree with that, because the only way the black community is gonna build generational wealth is through collectivism.
That's it.
While I believe a man should protect and provide, we weren't dealt those cards, and it's high inflation out there. So yes, we gotta all bring our put into the pot so we can build that generational wealth. Had to throw that in there.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, you have a number of women with more college education than ever before. Black women with more college education than ever before in our history. You have a lot of black men out there who didn't have the opportunity to go to college, so they're going to make less. So how in your right mind can black women understand I'm looking for a man that makes more than I do? They're not out there. The numbers aren't out there. And then when you add in the fact that a lot of these women that want men to make more than them don't look like they should be asking for that much.
So you bring up a good point, and we'll close on this.
So
a lot of women are being fed a unicorn. Black men are the lowest earners amongst men, and we are in the highest inflation we've ever been in. Yet black men are supposed to pay for everything. We're supposed to be financially perfect. And so you want a black man, but it doesn't line up with the math. The math
reality
is off.
The math
and so
ain't
I would
mathing.
tell, I'm not into telling women what they should do, but I would say, get that soft life, but understand that you might have to get it a different way. Collectivism might be that way to the soft life. And that is that. And then once you get to that soft life, only one of y'all got to work. But
Right.
that's just kind of how I see it.
Well, genetically, right? The caveman went out and killed the woolly mammoth. A bunch of cavemen went out, killed the woolly mammoth. They brought it home. There wasn't a woman waiting at home, waiting for him to cut the woolly mammoth, cook the woolly mammoth, and serve the woolly mammoth. When he brought the woolly mammoth home, his job was done. She cut it, she cleaned it, and the kids helped clean up the dishes. That's the way of survival. That's the way a community survives. It's not a woman saying, I'm fine, I got a nice body, do for me, do for me, do for me, because I'm old or I'm good looking. No, that doesn't work that way.
This has been amazing. I appreciate you
Appreciate
coming
you,
on
brother.
the show today.
Yes, sir. Let's drink.
The Gentleman's Renaissance is about bringing on all different types of views: business, politics, fitness, medicine, whatever. You are welcome here. We do not put people down for thinking different than us. We discuss. We do this thing that is lost called discourse. I'm clocking out.